Madeline Leman is an alt folk and country artist from Melbourne who released her album Nobody's Fool in 2019. In June, she released her second album, Ripen on the Vine, and it is a delightful piece of work. And I have many questions for her about that and other things. Hello, Madeline. Good to meet you.
Hi, Sophie. Good to meet you too.
You released Famously Fragile as a single in 2024, and that is on this album. So I'm wondering if that was when you were starting to plan the album, although, and I also saw something on your social media which indicated you had done some quite a lot of recording around that time.
So 2024, I released Famously Fragile. I think, God, it's so much time has passed. Like this album has been going along, going on for so long. I believe I had finished most of the album then.
Okay.
I think I tracked everything, all of the beds and the band tracks. I was probably finishing overdubs, backing vocals, extra overdubbed instruments and that kind of thing. But we did a lot of the recording, so the beds and all the rhythm tracks actually in 2023.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you have been holding on to this for quite a long time. And as an independent artist, one can understand why it's not cheap to release music.
Totally. I mean, yeah, for me, it wasn't even a money thing. I mean, it's always a money thing, but
Yeah.
it was more I was pregnant. I was pregnant when I was recording the rhythm tracks.
Mhm.
And then I had my son at in the middle of 2023, and so things just kind of were on hold. I gave myself a year to sort of, I was chipping away at it
Yeah.
in that first year, but I really gave myself a year to focus on him, and then I got back into it. So yeah, then I released Famously Fragile the end of 2024, but a lot happened. We moved house,
Right.
we moved to the country.
Oh, right.
Um, we still split our time between Melbourne. We're only 2 hours out of Melbourne, so we
Okay.
do actually spend a lot of time in Melbourne. So I still feel, and I grew up in Melbourne, so I still feel like a Melbourne-based artist.
Mhm.
My community, my band, everyone's from Melbourne, but yeah, we're kind of splitting our time, which is lovely. And then my son unfortunately got sick. He was in and out of hospital for 9 months. And that just put, a complete stop to putting the rest of the record out. So yeah, that's why the timeline just got blown out so heavily. And then once he was better, I then started releasing singles again, um, last year and then this year. So yeah, it's been very protracted, but I'm so happy that we got there.
Yeah, a lot has happened. I'm glad to hear your son is well, but 9 months is a very long time and a lot of
Mm.
stress on a mother because obviously, if your child's not well, there's no way you can be happy.
Yep. No, and everything just revolves around that and getting him better. And like he was never in critical danger, I'll say that. But it was a condition that they couldn't put their finger on. They couldn't work out how to fix it. So it was in and out of hospital, things flaring up, going back into hospital, multiple surgeries, multiple,
Oh,
multiple, multiple surgeries. It's sort of something you just kind of get used to. And I know a lot of parents have gone through this, that you just sort of have to cope because there's no option. Like you have to cope for them. And so when you're in it, you're sort of like, oh yeah, I'm coping. We're doing this. This is normal. And then you get out of it and you're like, whoa, that was such an intense period in our lives. But yes, he's doing really well now. So all good.
well, that's good. And if anyone wants to see his very cute wardrobe, there is a photo on your Instagram that I found. I just thought, oh, that's the most delightful cardigan I've ever seen. Adult or human for that matter.
I'm obsessed with op shopping, and I have too many clothes myself. So since having him, and even before having him, I started collecting kids' clothes, mostly like vintage and that kind of style kids' clothes. And it's such a fun outlet, and it means that I don't feel guilty about collecting piles of clothes myself. So I must say, he's a well-dressed toddler.
So now you live in the country. You probably have formed an opinion about whether op shopping is better in the country or in the city.
Well, I have so many opinions on this. We live near a town that has about five op shops
Okay.
and one vintage shop that is literally Melbourne op shop prices. Like it's so well priced and it's so tasty and I am obsessed with it. Um, I would say it is better in the country. It's not necessarily cheaper though.
Right.
I think op shops in the country have cottoned on and they have upped their prices,
Okay.
but they're not as devoured by
Mhm.
hipsters as they are in the city. So I have found so many good things because there's just not as many people trying to find the same things that I am, I guess. So that's my opinion. But
Yeah, one hopes that would be the case, actually, that yes, there are better finds. And also because you said you have a lot of clothes, but it's creative expression, clothing, and it's also costume when you're an artist. You have to have outfits for stage.
yeah, I find it a really creative outlet. I kind of felt funny about it for a while when I was younger, enjoying clothes. I mean, most of my clothes are secondhand or vintage, but I love playing with color and patterns and style and all of that. And I did feel like as a feminist, I was like, is that frivolous? Like, is that something that I shouldn't be spending my time on? And then, yeah, I realized no, it's actually a really creative outlet and it makes me feel like me. And it's a way of constructing identity and like putting on your armor for the world. And especially when I'm performing, it helps me to kind of transition from my day-to-day self to my performing self, which is important because we have to, as independent artists, and as a mother, I'm wearing many, many hats, and
Hmm.
it helps to really kind of be able to transform or like, shift into your different personas, I think. Mm.
Yeah, and as I'm fond of saying, adornment is common to all cultures because I think there can be that slant on things that, oh, it is not feminist to care about appearance, but actually it's an innate human need and desire to adorn and to express. And so I think it's perhaps in our culture that it's somehow looked down on, and clothing and dress and fashion are often seen as being lesser than. And I could talk about this subject for a very long time, but we're here to talk about your music. But that's all to say that anyone who's listening to this rather than watching is going to miss the fabulous outfit you have on and what's behind you that I can see. So
Oh, yes.
they can go to the video for that. So you mentioned your son, and in fact, I believe the last track you wrote for the album was "Baby on Board," and which is got in brackets "Baby I'm Bored."
Yeah.
So
Yes,
that was
that.
about him. Yeah.
Well, he wasn't born yet. I wasn't even pregnant when I wrote that song. So I wrote that song.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Um, I know it kind of sounds a bit mean if you think I wrote it about him.
I know.
But no,
I actually meant to say, and in fact, I said, "Oh, you wrote about him," and then I realized that's not the question I wrote at all. I think I just
that's
was
so
extemporizing.
fun. That's so fun. Um, yes, I wrote that song when I was considering getting pregnant. And I mean, I've always known that I wanted kids. So it was not really a decision of like, should I, shouldn't I? It was more like, when is a good time? We'd just come through the pandemic. I really wanted to finish my album. I set myself a goal to finish my second album before I had him, but then the pandemic hit and it was like, that's not going to happen. And so it was a really hard decision to just know when to do it and when to pull the trigger and go, okay, this is the time that I'm changing my life forever. And then I will have no time and my body will change and everything will change. And it just never felt like a good time. And I just didn't know how to deal with that kind of, I don't know, it was like pre-grieving my old self. I was so aware of it. I'd read so much about it. I mean, I listen to podcasts, I read books, like I'm very, I get into that. And I wanted to find something in art, in music and books that would help me with that decision. And I just couldn't really find it. I think there is way more now. Like I think there's been a real movement in the last like 3 years, even since Jean was born, just, art about motherhood is being taken seriously now, which I think is so amazing. Like we had this big exhibition at the NGV called Mother, uh,
Mhm.
which was such an incredible exhibition. Anyway, so I wrote that song about that, and it was sort of, I hope that everyone can sort of get something from the song because every human, male, female, other, like, has to make a decision about whether they want to pursue that path or not. Obviously, it's easier for some people and it's harder for others. Sometimes the decision's taken out of people's hands, but it's still something that everyone has to grapple with. And
Mhm.
um, yeah, it I really it helped me during that time writing that song, as writing always does.
And you released that as a single as well, so it's been out for longer than the album's been out. So I'm wondering if you have had good feedback from people who have actually said to you, "Oh, I can completely relate," or that that's a stage I'm at myself.
I have actually. Yeah, that's one of the nice things about social media.
Yeah.
Maybe the only one is people, yeah, reaching out that you don't know, saying, and a lot of women have, younger women have reached out to me saying, I have questions for you because, and it's, it's normal. It's human nature to want to talk through these big life decisions. I certainly was desperate to find other women, other mothers who were musicians and creatives and seeing them still doing it because I was terrified. I was terrified that it would take my career away. And so I looked for that desperately. And I found it to an extent, but also I didn't find it. And I think that's because it is really hard. And also the women who are doing it are really busy. And so they don't have time to be online or to be forming those communities or helping others necessarily because they're just getting by day to day. And I totally get that now. But I mean, I love to talk. I love to pontificate about the world and things. So yes, I have had some really lovely interactions with people who are considering doing it. And, I mean, it's hard to give advice because everyone's life is different. I have
Mm.
literally had people ask me like, so having a baby, like, yes or no? Like, should I do it? What do you think? What's your, you know, give us your rating out of 5. I'm like, 5 stars? I'm like, all I can tell you is what it's like to have a gene, which is my son. I have no idea what it's like to have any other child, so I cannot answer that question. But we're desperate. We're desperate to find answers to these questions, and yeah, it's hard.
Well, and it's part of the role of art, of course, is to enable conversations around things like that. And you mentioned writing, and writing as a way of looking at this particular part of your life and others. So, when did you start songwriting overall? Was it a childhood thing or a teenage years thing?
I have always sung since my mum said I could sing before I could talk. Like I've always been, my mum and dad called me the human radio. I would sit in the back of the car. They wouldn't be able to listen to the radio because I would just sing like on repeat. So I've always been obsessed with singing. Songwriting, I always wrote a lot of poems and I was into words and writing. I thought I wanted to be an author, I think, before even thinking I wanted to be a musician. But then I wrote my first song. I think I was 16.
Hmm.
My granny had just passed away. I was very close to her. I was grieving, and I just had all this emotion in me. I was obsessed with Missy Higgins. She was like my idol. Like when I heard that her first EP for the first time with Scar and All for Believing and all those songs, and I couldn't believe I'd never heard anything like that before. Because I grew up as a folkie. My parents were folkies. I'd listen to Joni Mitchell and James Taylor and all that. And then I went to a school where everyone was listening to pop music, and I sort of would have to, be a bit of a chameleon and at school pretend that I loved mainstream pop music. But then at home I was listening to folk music and I felt and jazz and that kind of loved jazz as well. And I felt like Missy Higgins was the first time I'd ever heard pop and folk and jazz combined in this fresh way, made by someone who was relatively, in the ballpark of my age, and writing about young people, feelings and emotions. It was just like revelatory for me. So the first song I wrote sounded exactly like a Missy Higgins song.
Right.
Like it was such a rip-off. But, it was a beginning. I wrote it on the piano, and I actually didn't write again on the piano for like a decade because I just couldn't not write something that sounded like Missy Higgins. I
Right.
just couldn't get away from it. So I taught myself guitar and then I started writing country songs on guitar, and I really found my feet there. But now for this album, I found my way back to the piano and I managed to write some songs that didn't sound like Missy Higgins on the piano. No shade to Missy. I love her. I just didn't want to be ripping her off.
Yeah, and there is absolutely nothing on this album that sounds like a Missy Higgins song. So the piano has been, or this piano that you've written it on, has produced a different sound. So you mentioned writing country songs. Were you therefore listening to a lot of country music around that time?
Yeah, I got really obsessed with country music. There was a huge, huge alt country scene. I mean, you would probably know this as a country music person in Melbourne, sort of during like the 2010s. It was the dominant sort of genre. It was the cool genre. Like now it's punk, but back in the day, you'd go to the old bar, you'd see an old country band. And I was in uni at that time. I was living in a share house, with other musicians, connecting with the scene, and I just started discovering all this amazing country music, like old country music, like Townes Van Zandt and Don
Hmm.
Bryan and Bonnie Raitt, and I was obsessed with all the old sort of old country or like outsider country. So yeah, definitely listening to a lot of it and writing a lot of it as well, and connected in with that scene at the time. Yeah.
So when you said you were sharing a share house with other musicians, so that sounds like you were performing at that time or thinking about it. So at what stage did you actually start performing? And I'm presuming it was with guitar because piano's not that portable.
Yes, exactly. Another reason why I wanted to teach myself guitar. Yes, I started performing. So I moved into a share house with Leah Senior. Do you know Leah Senior? She's a
I know her name, yeah, yeah.
amazing folk musician from Melbourne. She's my best friend, and we met working in a cafe, and we had dinner one night, and she showed me a song of hers, and I was just like absolutely gobsmacked because she's such an incredible songwriter. I played her one of my songs. I'd never played a song of mine really to anybody, maybe outside my family, but probably not even then. And she liked it, and she was really encouraging, and I couldn't believe that I just was like, okay, if someone who can write a song like that likes one of my songs, they must be okay. And she asked me to play in a folk duo with her, so I was just like, once again, couldn't believe it. So we had this very cute duo. She played ukulele, I played the guitar. We didn't wear shoes. We lo wore long folk dresses, vintage folk dresses. We harmonized. It was beautiful. So that was kind of, I think one of our first gigs was at the Abbotsford Convent, as at Lentil as Anything. It was like an old, do you remember that bar?
I remember hearing about Lentil as Anything in Melbourne. Never got to it.
It was such an institution, and then it all went really pear-shaped, but it was amazing at the time. Anyway, it's like a anyway, I won't describe what it is. It's a long thing. But yes, Leah and I played there. Got some very cute photos of that. We played at this festival. We made friends with all these guys in hardcore bands who lived near the cafe that we both worked at. And they invited us to play a New Year's Eve festival, play at their New Year's Eve festival that they were putting on, all hardcore and post-punk bands. And we were the one and only, not only one and only folk bands, but I think we were like the only women
Hmm.
on the lineup as well. And we like drove up. Leah had this big Tarago van that she'd painted birds all over, and it was such an icon. And we drove up in that and performed our songs. And the guys were so lovely. They were so encouraging. They loved it. Um, Hardcore bands like are always the nicest people. It's like this real juxtaposition.
Hmm.
Anyway, so that was one of our first gigs. So yes, that's how I started playing, Leah and I playing together. And then she kind of formed her own band. Formed my own band. She was singing in my band for a while. And then we parted ways because we just got too, well, she got too busy and yeah, and but we're still best friends. We actually she just performed or got up and sung a few songs with me at my album launch, and she sang on my record, and she's always involved in my projects because yeah, she's great.
So at the time we're speaking, you have been playing a few shows, and there are a couple more to come, I think. Is I'm guessing these days, just because of the nature of live music, you're not playing as regularly. You also have other commitments, as previously discussed, but you have put together this run of shows. So I'm guessing you've been enjoying it.
I have. It's been really nice. It's a different way of doing it. I think when I was younger, I just sort of did shows all the time, and it was sort of you were constantly in every phase. You're always in the gigging phase. You're always in the writing phase. You're always in like the plan. Like it's just all at once, and it feels nice now to kind of be like, no, I'm going to compartmentalize. There's the writing phase, then there's the recording phase, then there's the hardcore gigging or touring phase, and then you go move into the next phase. It's mostly because of time and logistics, but it also just for your own headspace and really getting into each one of those phases, I find
Mhm.
is nice as well. So it feels yeah, really cool to have the string of shows. And for the band as well, they get really well rehearsed. They feel really comfortable in the songs. So yeah, I've been loving it. It's been really, really nice. Yeah.
Now, on the new album, Ripen on the Vine, you have a song called Head in the Chords. And I saw the titles like that. It's just the best title for a musician to put on a song. I don't think anyone ever has, though. So it did make me think, did you have your head in the chords from a young age? And as you said, you were the human radio, basically, for your parents. So when you were a child with your head in the chords, what songs were you singing when you were in the back seat of the
Ooh,
car?
ooh, ooh. Gosh, everything and anything. I mean, my parents are both musical. They used to play in a band together. That's they kind of got together. So we would sing everything from like, rhymes and old nursery rhymes to, yeah, folk songs to pop songs. Like, yeah, a lot of, as I said, like Joni and James Taylor and that kind of, or I guess the Beatles, Bob Dylan. But then, yeah, like fun. My mum, did her master's in the folklore of children's play. So she
Oh,
was
wow.
like an expert in kids' rhymes and games and clapping games and all of that stuff. So we would just have a constant stream of those kind of things. And I've actually now started teaching kids dance
Oh.
and music, and I'm just going through all of those songs. So literally today, that's what I was doing. So it was really beautiful. And some of the songs the kids actually knew. And it's just such a beautiful tradition of passing, those kind of songs down. Um,
Yeah.
so I think my mum's very chuffed that I'm doing that. Yeah.
And I also saw on your Instagram, it was posted a while ago, but it's a photo of you as a child where you have these amazing rings on your hands and you've got these incredible sunglasses on as well. And you're striking, shall we say, a theatrical pose. And I just
I,
thought that is just the most delightful photo.
I literally showed someone that photo today at the school. That's funny. Yes, I was definitely a diva from a young age. That is for sure. It's funny when you're young, you think that your parents are just like adoring of absolutely everything you do. And then once you get older and you become a parent, you realize that there is a limit where your parents are kind of going, oh no, like maybe not another song, or like maybe you need to sit down now, or like maybe those people don't want to watch you doing another dance routine, and like, but everyone's like, yeah. I mean, my son's 3, so I'm enthralled by everything he does, but I'm sure he'll get to an age where it's like, okay, time to sit down. People don't want to hear the 10th song that you're performing for them. But I mean, I was also shy. I was very much like that around my family. But out in public, I definitely struggled with a bit of like performance anxiety when I first started playing. I definitely couldn't sing as well as I could at home. I would always feel very disappointed after I would do any type of performance because I just couldn't quite do it as well as I could at home. And I knew I had it in me, but I just couldn't breathe properly because I used to get so nervous and I used to make myself sick. Like I did year 12 music, and I remember in my final exam, I just worked myself up so much that I was so unwell for my final performance. It's just, it's just anxiety. But I've luckily gotten over that now, and I don't experience that, yeah, that anxiety anymore, which is nice.
Do
Yeah.
you think it was basically just exposure therapy that you just had to keep doing it and then just till it almost like till your body normalized the experience?
100%, definitely. I think the best thing I did in my early 20s was just play as many shows as possible. Pubs, busking. I lived overseas. I lived in Montreal for a while, and I had this regular gig busking at a farmer's market. And it was so good for that because you just did it. It became normal. You played. I also had a regular gig. They do this great thing in North America, which I don't feel like we do so much here, where cafes put on music
Hmm.
and you have a regular slot. So I would play like every Wednesday at 11 a.m. at this cafe in Montreal, and people would come for their lunch, and you'd have regulars coming in. And it was such a great way to work up a repertoire, to practice new songs, to just get comfortable. And yeah, I don't know of anywhere doing that in Melbourne or, yeah, in Australia. I'm sure there are, but it's just more of a tradition there, I think.
Probably our licensing laws tangle things in knots. Although I did recently interview Olive May, who's an artist from Southwest WA. She plays in a bakery on a Sunday morning. It's a regular gig for her. And I was like, I have not heard of this, but what a great idea.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, live music licenses. But if you're paying for like the royalties, I don't know. Yeah,
I
that's
know, I mean
interesting.
like the what venues are allowed to do because New South Wales, which is where I am, until quite recently, had these these intricate laws along the lines of if you had a mirror ball hanging from the ceiling, you were classified as a particular sort of music venue, and you could not have live music of a different genre played in that venue. It was like that. It was like the venues had to decide which genre of music they were going to have, and they had to stick with it. And so consequently, venues would just throw up their hands and say, "Well, forget it." And they're now working on changing all of that because we have a nighttime economy um, person who's looking after it all. But that sort of those sorts of rules, I think, make a lot of venues just give up because it's too hard.
Yes, and often, unfortunately, it's selling alcohol that pays for musicians. I feel like
Yeah.
people don't know this, but like most live music venues, the way that they pay artists is through alcohol sales. And so everything is dictated by that. Like that's why you can't, they want to put bands on a Saturday night that are drinking bands that are like high energy drinking bands because that's how they pay. And it's no shade to them. Like it's hard out there, but it would be nice if it was not. As a folk artist, it would be
Yeah.
nice if it wasn't that way, but
Yeah.
it is what it is.
But also back to your music, one of the things I really loved about the album, and I heard it on your first album as well, is whimsy. So it struck me that you're a whimsical artist, and whimsy is hard to define, but you kind of know it when you hear it, know it when you see it, and I love it. I love whimsy. It is in short supply,
Hmm.
but I think it probably, as in life, it's in short supply. But I was listening to it thinking it's a combination of lyrics and the music you've chosen for each song because it's not as if this song sounds the same one song to the next. It's a great variety, I think, on there. But always I felt this sense of you just having a certain perspective on life, shall we say, that meant there was this lightness to it, even if the subject matter was quite difficult.
That's nice. I mean, yes, I like whimsy for sure. I think in one of my bios I wrote once, like I try to balance power and whimsy because I feel like I have this duality within me where I feel very passionately about things and I'm very political and I care about the world and my head is sometimes in the chords, but sometimes it's right here on earth. I studied an
Yeah.
arts degree. Um, I I love people. I'm very much in this world and of this time as well. But then also part of me is like very much of another time, very
Mhm.
much has my head in the chords, very much wants to just watch how the light is dappled on the tree and, sip my tea and write a song on the back. Yeah, it's definitely something that I try to balance in my songwriting as well. Like I think you can probably have too much whimsy in a song and it sort of loses its meaning or loses its relevance or its power or something. But then a touch of whimsy, I think, is always good.
Yeah. And sometimes to me, and that's not to say, yeah, the whole album is not whimsical, but it was sometimes in the vocal choices. I just thought, oh, there's a way you could have gone with that, probably more straight down the line, but then there was just sort of this way you sang, and I thought, "Oh, I wonder what was going on in the studio at that time. Like just this decision that was made. Yeah.
Oh, I love that you thought about that. I mean, there's an interesting story about one of the tracks. Rewrite the Classics, which is the second
Mhm.
last track on the record, and it's just piano and vocals. And I wrote it in 2019 after we had those devastating bushfires. And I remember we couldn't go outside because the air was polluted, and it was just like the first time I felt like I had personally felt the effects of climate change in a really scary way that was like affecting my health and my family and it was, yeah, it was intense. And so I wrote, it's about climate change and about our fear of, the seasons dying and out
Mhm.
the way that the role that summer plays in our life. Like I'm a beach baby. I love going to the beach. And summer was always my absolute favorite time of year. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, maybe summer's not going to be the best time of year. Maybe that all that joy and freedom that we feel at the end of the year during summer is actually going to be taken over by anxiety around
Mm.
fires, which was like, Oh, devastating. Anyway, so it's a very sad song, very
Mm.
heavy song, but I think I was maybe a little bit scared of that feeling and that heaviness. And so I was singing it in this way that was a little bit, had a bit of affect on my voice. I was like, I wanted to be kind of Aldous Harding. It was sort of a bit weird. I wanted it to be a bit weird. And I liked I did, and I recorded it in the studio and I was like, I love this take. I really like how my voice is sounding. And then I had Jean. A year passed, and it was very weird when you spend so much time on one project. You kind of forget what you've done, and then you kind of get your head back in it, and you're like, okay, I'm going to listen to these takes, see where we're at. And you listen to it again, and you're like, huh, this is interesting. Do I still like this? Have I changed? And I had changed. I had a baby. Um, and I went back into the studio, and Leah actually suggested. So I was recording it at Leah's house down the
Mhm.
beach, down the coast, with her partner, who is a recording engineer. And she was always my sounding board. Like I'd do a take, and then I'd go out and, get her to come in and listen to the take. And I re-recorded Ripen on the Vine, and I loved how I re-recorded it. And Leah was like, "Why don't you also re-record, rewrite the classics, and just lay off the affect, maybe try and sing it a little bit straighter, like to kind of bring out the meaning of the song a little bit more." And when you get very attached to things when you're recording, and I get very attached to very particular vocal sounds because I'm a singer predominantly. And I was like, all right, I mean, I liked that other version, but I'll give it a go. So she sat in the studio with me with Jessie as well. And I took her notes and I just decided to sing through things rather than do weird stuff with my voice at the end. And I also really tried to connect with the meaning of the song. And Leah is someone who also is very afraid of climate change. She's very passionate about the environment. And she has this idea as well. I kind of wrote the song for her because she has this idea that if the seasons go, what are the poets going to write about anymore? If the world turns into one giant summer, what's going to, the crispness of an autumn day, like that's not going to inspire us anymore. And her first album was called Summers on the Ground, and then she had a lot of songs about seasons. But anyway, it's a long-winded way of saying that Leah inspired that song. And so I just thought about her and I thought about Jean, my son, and I played the song and I just started crying. Like through the end of the song. It really hit me like that grief, like that climate grief that I feel like we're all trying to like push away a little bit because it's too much for our brains to like.
Mhm.
And I kept playing through it, but I, completely changed the ending because I was crying. But I was like, for some reason, I just kind of kept playing. And then I came back in and I tried to sing the ending, but my voice was cracking. And it was like this whole thing. But I finished the song and I was ready to turn around and be like, well, guys, that wasn't the take, was it? Let's do it again. I turn around and Leah and Jessie are both just like crying. And they were both just like, oh, Maddie, like, oh my God, that's the take. And I was like, no. I was like, hell no. I hate crying in public. There's no way I'm releasing a song where I'm just sobbing. They were like, no, it's so powerful. It's so moving. And we went back and forth on it for months and months. And I was like, no, Jessie was like, you gotta, you gotta. Lee was like, you have to. And I'm glad I took their advice. So we did use that take. We edited it slightly, so there's not a lot of crying on there, but you can definitely hear my voice crack and you can definitely hear me trying to sing through like real tears. And I can't listen to that song um, because it's kind of mortifying. But yeah, Jesse, he would just like tear up when he was trying to mix it. He would like, because yeah, it was. And it's amazing how just changing a vocal delivery really helped me to find that meaning and connect with that meaning. And
Mhm.
yeah, anyway, so it's great that you picked up on how vocals can be delivered and how it can, change a song. And yeah.
Well, and in that particular song, every time I was listening to the album, like that would stop me. And I would just think, ooh, ooh, and I would feel it because it's, and so now I know why. It was because it was coming from a particular place for you as an artist. And I was thinking, God, the vocal sounds really different on this to some of the other songs. And it is a really affecting song. And you do have, I think it's the second last track. So you do kind of take us out with that a bit, and it's a great place for it. You don't leave us there. There's another song after it, but I think we've had this arc through the album, and then we come to this place. It's like, oh, okay, well, I think I'm ready for this emotion, and then I'm ready to be eased out of it.
Totally. Well, that's funny that you say that because I did toy with putting that as the last song because I was like, how do you go anywhere from crying? Like, what could be the next song? Like, what could follow that? Which was another reason why I was like, we can't use that take. Like, where would it go on the album? Like, but then now it makes so much sense to me because the last song is something I haven't seen before, which is a political song. It's about things wanting to change, wanting to see political change. Um, and it's a song that I wrote out of frustration for things not changing, but it's ultimately a hopeful song that things can change and will change. And the very last part of that last song is some group singing with all my friends and band singing together, which I think is very powerful. You know, singing together with other people is, there's a reason why protest movements sing and revolutionaries sing and folk singers write protest songs because singing is really rousing. It's such a primal thing. And I think
Mhm.
singing with other people is such a beautiful thing. So yeah, I'm glad that I decided to end with that because you want to be pulled out of it because if you sit in that grief, then you're just paralyzed. You can't
Mhm.
do anything. And I think that doesn't help. Um, so yeah.
Now, you said of this album that it's a step closer to the sound I've always been chasing. It represents a musical maturity that I'm really proud of and a vulnerability that is slightly terrifying, but ultimately really powerful. That statement about the sound I've always been chasing, though, I'm interested when that sound started as an idea for you because you did have the first album out in 2019. So was it that that album you didn't feel like you could get to that sound you wanted, or was it something that developed after that?
Hmm. That is a really interesting question. I think if you'd asked me in 2019, I would have said like, this is me, like this is my sound. And I am really proud of those songs and I am proud of that album. Um, I just didn't think I knew. But I
Mm,
think deep down, like I said, I grew up listening to more folk music than country music. I
mhm,
also loved pop music. I loved Missy Higgins, and I feel like I wanted to blend all of those things. It was a time in my life that I was really obsessed with country music, and I still love country music and I listen to it and it will always inform my songwriting, and I would like to one day make a purely country album again. But I feel like when I'm talking about really personal things, which this album was very personal, it didn't feel authentic to me to write those personal stories through the vehicle of country music because
mm,
it just didn't seem to fit with my life experience. I grew up in the city. I'm a city girl, really. I mean, I spent a lot of time by the ocean and love nature and all of that, but um, it just felt like if I wanted to really write the music that I love, I needed to incorporate some other elements.
mm.
Country music is not the one and only.
Yeah.
Um, but that being said, it's very dominant because I think it's such a amazing genre for storytelling. And I love the lightness. You know, I find some folk music obviously can, if the lyrics are heavy and the music's heavy, sometimes I find it doesn't have as much of an impact. The songs
Mhm,
that I love are like those country songs that kind of sound jaunty, but they're actually devastating in the lyrics.
mhm.
Um, yeah, so I don't know if I answered your question, but I guess it's all organic. It's also the people you're hanging around. Like I was very much, as I said before, in that country scene
Mhm,
for a long time. And then I feel like I've sort of moved out of that country. I mean, I feel like I've never really fitted in perfectly to the country scene because my first album, even some people wouldn't have considered that straight up and down
mhm,
country, even though it's like, it was very much Americana, I think, but some people don't like that genre or know what that means or whatever.
Right.
And I think my peers now that I spend a lot of time with and musically are entwined with are more in the like alt folk, alt pop,
Mm.
kind of indie space rather than just straight up and down country. So that definitely has an influence, I think, as well. But yeah, I actually would love to write another country album because I love writing country songs. It's so fun. It's so fun. It's such a fun genre. So yeah.
Well, something else that's fun and related to country that I saw that you are actively engaged in is boot scooting, because apparently you
Yeah,
teach it.
I do. I do. Yes. That has been a thing for a few years. When a friend of mine invited me to a class in Melbourne, and I just couldn't believe it. It was like this incredible confluence of all my interests because I grew up dancing. Like I did so many dance classes. I did competitions. I did everything, jazz, ballet, tap, funk, modern, whatever. I was obsessed. I actually have studied dance more than I've studied music. Music
Yeah.
was something that innately, like I could always sing, and I had musical parents, so music was always around me, and it was something I did at home. But in terms of actually taking classes, it was all dance. But then as an adult, you don't dance. I mean, it's not really a thing that you pursue as an adult, unfortunately. But then this was like country music and dance and socializing. And I did it just after my son was born. So I was desperate to get out of the house and be around people and get into my body, do some exercise and get back into like creative stuff. And it was just the perfect thing for me. So I think I went every week for the year after I had. I mean, I didn't start straight away. I think I started when Jean was maybe 3 months old, and I went for a year every week. Just became obsessed with it. And then the teachers of that class started to ask me to teach and fill in for them. And I started doing events and parties, and then we moved down here, and I started my own class down here. So
Ah,
yeah.
well, that's and you have some fabulous boots, as I saw on your social media as well. So, do you teach in the boots?
Not the ones in the famously fragile clip. Those ones are extremely high. I wish they're incredible boots. They're like amazing rhinestone they're like this amazing designer. I managed to get them like heavily discounted, but they were like this incredible designer who only designs cowboy boots. Like this big silver eagle and yeah, big rhinestones, but the heel is like that high.
Right.
So no, I don't teach in those, but I do teach in my other white cowboy boots that have a heel that's about that high. Um, yeah, you gotta have the boots. It actually, I always tell my students because they ask me like, do I have to wear boots? It's actually easier to dance in cowboy boots because as long as they're comfortable, because if you have a slight heel as opposed to runners, which are flat, it
Mm-hmm.
um it puts your weight forward onto the balls of your feet, and that's where you need to be when you're dancing, so you can be light-footed, so your weight is easily transferred. I think people think dancing in heels is going to be harder, but
Mm-hmm.
I find that it actually, as I said, as long as you can walk in them and they're comfortable, um, that's why people do it, I guess. Yeah.
Apart from which, dancing in runners would be a travesty. They grip on a floor. You can't move
Right.
around.
Exactly. The grippiness is an issue.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Well, I hope people listening to this or watching it get along to one of those classes if they're in your area. I've had you talking for quite a while, Madeline. I'm going to leave it there, but it was so lovely to talk to you. Thanks for your
So
time.
nice. So nice to meet you, Sophie. Thank you.